So, hello and welcome to, I think this is our 6th session of Tarot Unplugged, and today I'm going to be actually covering a oracle deck, or a couple of oracle decks. I allowed the universe to let me know which decks I'd be using by the decks I had to hand and went to find, and I have the Philosopher's Stone, which is one of my favourite all-time decks to use. I use it for a lot of contemplation work and so forth, and I just happened to pick up the Inscription Oracle, which is a very, very different sort of oracle deck. So we did take a look at the Psi cards, for example. Let me just change my screen here so I can see the chat. Let me just find the chat location here. So hello Bill, hello Sherry, hello Tracy. First of all, can someone confirm that they can actually hear me in the chat? That would be really useful. And then what we're going to do is take a look at oracle decks and how we might go about reading them, and I'm going to give some examples. So let me just see if the microphone is set up. Excellent, brilliant. So, first of all, let's take a look at the Philosopher's Stone. So I'm going to have a look at the Philosopher's Stone here with you, and this is really falling to pieces. I've had this so long. It's unfortunately out of print. It's been out of print for an awfully long time, which is a shame. And you can see that the cards are created with stone-like figures. So there is a keyword on the card, a number, and then the general image as well. So it's very much a intuitive deck. It's very much a deeper deck really for reading. I'm not quite sure where my little white book for this is. It's about somewhere, I'm sure. But I tend not to use the little white book these days. Let me just take these out there. There we go. So it was created by an artist called DS, and say unfortunately it's out of print, but I always recommend people grab a copy if they see it on eBay or something like that, because again I use it often for teaching as well. So has someone a reasonably deep or spiritual or profound or layered, nuanced question for me, so that we can use the Philosopher's Stone in a real example, and then we can talk out of that into how we go about reading cartomantic decks, oracle decks, inspiration decks, as US Games I think are now rebranding them away from oracle decks into inspiration decks, dream decks, and so forth. In fact, that reminds me, we do have a Somnium Tarot, and there is a couple of really good tarot decks based on dream work and Jungian work, and I'm going to be doing a full video on the channel about those quite soon. So has anybody in the chat got a real question, or I will just invent my own question so that we can take a look at the Philosopher's Stone? I'll show you a few more of the cards. So here we have Confrontation. I just love the artwork of this deck, and it appeals to my sort of visual nature, really. And again, it doesn't matter if an oracle deck doesn't particularly grab you. Oh, I've just found the little booklet. It's only a very small booklet, as you can see, so we will refer to that a little bit. So there's the booklet. I shall put that down there for the moment. In fact, it does have a little spread here that we could possibly use. So if nobody has a question for this particular deck, then what I'll do is I'll lay out a reading for it using the example in the little booklet. When I start with an oracle deck, I often, not always, but often, these are guidelines, not necessarily rules, go straight from the booklet. I always force myself to read the booklet. Okay, Bill, excellent. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, thank you, Bill, in the live chat, who has asked the question, what was the intent or purpose of the initiatory experience that Bill, as he puts it, endured, a very specific keyword as opposed to experienced, perhaps, some years ago, a shamanic. That would be ideal for this deck. And that is one thing about oracle decks. It's very good to have a whole range of oracle decks for different types of purpose. Quite often when people ask me, how do you consecrate a deck? How do you consecrate a tarot deck and so forth? I always say, well, how does the deck demand to be consecrated, demand to be initiated? So with this deck, for example, the Philosopher's Stone, I had a more alchemical sort of initiatory experience for the deck itself to initiate the deck. And the Thoth deck, I had a sort of pseudo ancient Egyptian ritual that I used for that deck. Each deck has its own essence, its own quintessence, as this reading actually has it, that will allow you to ask it, how do I want to consecrate that particular deck? And the oracular moment really starts from that. From the moment you receive the deck, you buy it, you're given it, and or it comes into your hands, then yeah, it will start to communicate if you listen to it, if you talk to it, if you communicate directly with it. And you might not get on. It's like meeting a new friend or new person who might become a friend. Different decks have their own different nature. So let's take a look at this. We have the future, the quintessence, the outer world, the inner world, and the past. So it's very much a spread sort of cross at the past, the future, inner and outer, and the quintessent. So let's have a look then. So I'm going to shuffle these and consider Bill's experience. Okay, here we go. So let me just put the artist card over there. So, now for some reason I don't want to put the quintessence down first. I'm going to go with, this is purely intuitive, past and future, inner world, outer world, and then the quintessence. And what we do is, first of all, with this particular deck, and I'm going to use a sort of base card down here from the base of the deck. So, did you ever become initiated and get given the other direction or river flowing the other way in the paths between the Sephiroth of the tree? Okay, I'll come back to that. That's a really interesting question, Lady Justice. But let's take a look at these first of all. So we have the self in the middle. Can you see, Bill, this self in the center, which is the quintessence? And this is surely a initiatory experience going on here in the middle. And if we take a look at the meaning in the book, which I always do when I'm first reading with the deck, identity center, assertion maybe, but identity. So self and identity is very important. And to me, this is exactly what constitutes an initiation. To me, an initiation is something that changes our state of awareness, our state of consciousness, and in doing so, specifically, it impacts our state of identity, our state of attachment to self-image. And the state of identity is basically a composite process made of our belief system, our sense of time and space, and our values, and our inner narrative as to who and what we are, what we're capable of, and that is built upon our memory. So all of those things make a sort of triangle or square that become a composite process, which we call self, like I like football, or I am going to the movies tomorrow, or I'm the sort of person who doesn't believe in capital punishment. All of these things constitute who we actually are. But we are none of those things, in effect. That it's all a self-referential narrative, and each state of initiation reveals and restitutes those things as a result of initiation. And as Bill is saying, all of those things were blown out of the water 110%. That is a literal definition of initiation. Because the word to initiate means to begin, and what do we begin? We begin the new life in and out of the new sense of identity and relationship to inner and outer. So let's take a look at inner and outer. And again, we have a nice contrast here. We have secret, card 18, on the inner, and order on the outside. So can you see how the words make up secret order? As in initiation in a secret order. Again, we couldn't make these things up if we tried, but this is the oracular moment that the self is in a secret order. And this allows us to use the keywords in a very particular way, in a very literal way, because when we talk about secret orders, often people get the idea of a group of initiates and things along these lines in robes and so forth. And we do have a secret order, the Order of Everlasting Day, that we do all of this work in. And there's about 12 or 13 of us. We've been going about 10 years. And we have the Crucible process, which is a 1-year process for being admitted into the order itself. But the secret order is yourself, is your ordering of reality and your relationship to reality through the self. And that is the true secret order. We are all in our own secret order, and we are all part of a singular secret order, which is our state of awareness, our humanity, and our very being. So on the inner, then, we have secret. Let's have a look at some keywords that the S gives us for secret. So seclusion, realization, and that's an interesting one, realization, closeness and attraction. So on the inner, there was a initiatory experience that was really a realization. And that's the key word for this. And can you see how the reality, Robert Robert Anton Wilson said that reality is whatever you laugh at and doesn't go away, something along those lines. It's something that when you laugh at it, it doesn't go away. And this is really facing up to reality. And you'll notice that the shadow is actually being cast. With this particular deck, I like to use the light in it very much, because the light is obviously a symbol of awareness, consciousness and truth and the divine. And here, can you see how the foreground, the face, is hidden in shadow, but the light is coming from behind and casting a shadow on an object that seems to be composed of stones, which are perhaps each individual belief that make up a person. So all of a sudden you are extracted from your belief system, and then that casts a shadow upon it because there's a new light coming in from behind. Can you see how this light is here and it's now shining as an almost discrete entity onto the self stone here? So this is the secret, and in effect this is the secret of reality, of the universe, that we are. It's a picture of Plato's cave in effect, that everything is created from a shadow of the light that is our awareness. And there is some sort of reality, but it is everything, and it's composed here of those stones. So on the inner then, there was a realization. And this is the thing with initiation. It is, again, to quote Robert Anton Wilson, right where you are sitting now. It's the title of one of his books. Right where you are sitting now is the truth, is reality, is the self. And Well, Robert Anton Wilson was contradictory over his life as well, but I do find some of his exercises very, very undoing of the self and the belief system. Robert Anton Wilson's work, Prometheus Rising, I recommend to everyone. I think I might have shown this in the previous, just knocking the camera there. This book here, Prometheus Rising, is one of my favourite all-time practical books. We give it Zealotors, Theoricus in our magical order to work from. It's got loads of exercises and so on. Yes, but there is a lot of serious related material in there as well. Okay, so realization above understanding. On the inner and then on the outer, we have order. So how does the secret order part? See, the order is the unity, because this is duality, and here we have unity. We also have the Trinity here. I did shuffle the cards. You did see me shuffle them, and it was a shuffle deck to begin with, but we have 1, 2, and 3 here. Simple as 1, 2, 3. And order, we have beginning, plan, foundation, and overview. And when we're learning a new deck, like an oracle deck like this, quite often I allow the cards, the keywords to just I just look at them and see which one fits. And here we obviously have the first one, beginning. It is as simple as realization, beginning. So self-realization in the beginning is the literal definition of initiation. So how about that, Bill? To answer your question, self-realization, beginning. That is literally the Western esoteric initiatory system definition of initiation. I couldn't have illustrated it any better myself, but I always like to let the cards do all of the work. We are only tarot card readers. That's all we are. All we have to do is read the cards and they will give us the answer every time, guaranteed, no messing around. So how about that? Does that make sense? That, again, with an oracle deck, when you're doing a reading, it's really important to go back to the question. We've looked at this in several of these worked examples that we're doing in this series, that it's so important to go back to Bill's question. we can get carried away sometimes with our ability, with our reading, with our metaphors, with our extended stories to illustrate a point, with clever wording, and the cards themselves can overwhelm us somehow and we might lose track of where we are, or all sorts of other things. But at the end of the day, we take a step back, a nice breath, and then we say, so Bill asked, what was the real purpose of the spiritual initiation, and was it truly a spiritual experience? Well, in effect, it was an experience that has led you to this point, to find out that some guy in the Lake District of England can lay out a set of cards and literally say, here is a definition of initiation for you. So surely the universe is interconnected. Okay? And this is what every tarot reading tells us, and tells our client, our querent, our friend, member of the family, stranger, whoever it might be, colleague that we're doing the reading with. It tells us that the universe and we are all connected underneath everything else. So secret order, self in a secret order, self-realization, making a beginning. Literally, this is initiation. So the answer is yes, it was a spiritual initiation. But you also asked, and again, we mustn't go away from the question, if this answers, was it truly a spiritual experience, which is an almost certain yes, what was the real purpose of it? And Bill had put real in single quote marks, and sometimes a client may say, what do you think it was really about? Or what do you think might be the main thing about it? And they will put little codifiers, little tags before the question itself. So here we are talking about the real purpose, not the purpose, but the real purpose. So we want to answer that here. So in the past then, we're going to take a look at the past and future, and then we're going to come back to the quintessence again. So the past, and again, if we get stuck, we just look at the little white book if we're learning the deck for the first time, because I want to demonstrate how I go about learning a deck, in case it's any use to anyone. Past, present view of your past. Origin, okay, so origin. So this is the origin of where this experience came from, because we're applying this to the question. We've got the words here, we've got the words in the question, we fasten one to the other. So this is the original purpose, the originating point, the root cause, the root intent of that spiritual initiation that Bill endured, experienced, went through. And can you see what card that is? If we have a look at the wording there, this is what it was for. This is what it was to do. This is its real purpose. This is where the real purpose stems from. And it is freedom. So it was freedom from a limited or constrained or inadequate, perhaps obsolete belief system, sense of identity, sense of self, value system, and so forth. It came to you, it happened to you, you needed to endure it because you were seeking freedom, or part of you was seeking freedom, this part of you that looks like that inside. Okay? There was a sense of requiring freedom. This is from where it all came. If you hadn't have had that, you wouldn't have been going through the shamanic experience, or it wouldn't have served that particular purpose. But that's where it was coming from. Okay, does that make sense, Bill? That is a source for the real purpose. It was there to liberate you, as all initiation should do. It should liberate you from the prior, from the past, into the future. Okay? then the future then, in terms of a purpose of it, if this is what it was there to arise from, where was it leading? Where was it leading you to? So prudence, and can you see the image? Take a look at the image on this. Say this is a very visual deck, a very intuitive deck, and in the second part of today we're going to look at a really intuitive deck, and we're going to have fun with that, I'm sure. But can you see how there is one small stone behind? It's like we have moved now from this with all of the stones in front, or coalescing, and now there's a far simpler idea behind. Yeah, signing out, but consolidating to a singular point in order to face whatever challenges are ahead of you. And again, this is unlike this card. We can compare the cards as well in an oracle deck to learn how to use it. Just keep saying what is the same, what is different, where's the light different, is the colouring any different, the relationships of the size of the objects, if it's got a lot of people in the deck or faces, what is different about their expressions and so forth. So again, we also might want to look and see what the artist or the designer or both feel about the word prudence, which is one of the virtues, of course. And we have card 11. So this is care, consideration and equilibrium. So here I'm going for equilibrium. It could be those that might align with what Bill is feeling in this reading, care, consideration, but there's a sense of equilibrium as well. So it was there to bring you equilibrium. And yeah, when we take a look in this deck, can you see the reordering that's going on? This has been broken apart, poof, like that, through initiation. It is then reordered, one, singular, and then split into two. A principle behind you that you're then applying a singular principle based on a sense of freedom from previous contracts in order to look ahead in a very singular way. And this is freedom. Perhaps in the past you would build everything up ahead of you, coalesced it, and now there's a more singular freedom. But what I often do with this is I let the person go away with a photo of, sometimes when I'm doing a tarot reading, I use an oracle deck as well for a reminder card, an anchor card I call it, or a key card. And often I use the Philosopher's Stone just because I love to use it and because it goes deep, and I always want a client, even if they're asking about how their holiday is going to go, I want something deeper underneath that as well, if they're ready to listen to that, if it's any use to them. And I often draw a singular Philosopher's Stone card, get them to take a picture of it and ask them to maybe use it as a screensaver, act as a reminder, have a look at it, spend 5 minutes contemplating it. If they do shamanic work, inner guide work, dream work, to use it in whatever way suits them as an image to unlock deepness from the reading itself. I actually quoted something from the Chaldean Oracles a couple of days ago on my Facebook, and it was, the truth is in the deep. The depth has the truth. And this is partly why I wanted to do the Philosopher's Stone. Right, Bill, so there we have that singularity of purpose leading to a very different situation in the future. And the reminder card underneath, the base card, bottom of the deck that's been sat there while we've been doing the rest of this reading, is return. Can you see again how that's perhaps a warning, perhaps it's an advice card. We can take a look again at the manual and stick to the wording. Return, recall, consequence, catching up, and lateness. So it's about, to me, recall and consequence. There is something coming back that perhaps is a again, with this particular deck, I like to leave it to the client to, I might have my own ideas, but I will perhaps want to word it so that the client is somewhat unconscious of that, which is not much use when we're doing this as a demonstration reading, I must admit, but that's the problem about doing proper readings online, because obviously you're replicating what goes on in a private, personal, and often more elaborately worded and subtle, nuanced, unconscious forms of language that you might use that aren't necessarily suited to a clear demonstration of a reading method. So here I would ask Bill, I would say, so when you feel like this, how does sometimes that change so you feel like that? How does that differ to that? This is obviously what you want, but this often happens or sometimes happens. This is the future, your future, and this is something that has still consequence, has a return, that is knocking you forwards in some way or another. And what do you want to do about that is the question for next time for yourself, as a question from the reading itself. So not only have we answered your question with this reading, but we have given you a question as well to move onwards, to take this, to consolidate it, to understand, to realise more than understand what is going on for you. And I would then ask the person, are we happy with that reading? And thank you for having a reading with me, and blah, blah, blah. And that would be a simple half an hour reading. And I would let the client go away with a picture of that. So obviously Bill will have a in perpetuity video of this for that question. So does anyone have in the live chat, which is one of the benefits of a doing a live chat, any questions about how I went about that, this particular deck, what it can be used for perhaps, or any other questions whilst we're here before we switch to the Inner Scription Oracle by Ninky van Zwol, which is one of my favourite, slightly newer decks. I've had this for maybe a year and a half, 2 years now, but it's a gorgeous deck, particularly for what we're about to do with it as well. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Bill. And we are covering a lot more of this in the members only section. I have to, at the halfway point, insert a self-advert in a sense that I have a members only part of this channel, and we're going to be doing a lot of work inside that is far better to do with video and so forth. So do join if you want to join us. There's a small group of us, and we are going to be doing a lot of work over the coming year or several years that is particularly suited to YouTube, to this video format, both live and recorded videos. Okay, thank you, Bill. So I can come back to any, if you're watching this as a recording as well, sort of long after the event, then do put any questions that you might have in the in the video, and I do check, and YouTube tells me when people have left comments as well, so I can always come back and answer the questions as well. Okay then, so the Inscription Oracle is a interesting deck. Now there is a word, a semic. Is it on the back here? So it isn't on the back, but the word is asemic or asemic, and this is an asemic deck, which is basically a deck. Did I have the little book for this? I did somewhere. Where did I just put it? There it is. Right, before we take a look at the deck, let me just find that definition for the purposes. Yes, asemic script. So asemic is an asemic script is like a made-up language, and to be honest, I used to do this at school. Let me just find a bit of paper. When I was bored at school, I used to doodle, but it wasn't just doodling. I always found myself doodling a bit like this. I don't know if this pen is working, but I'll just demonstrate. And I would basically fill whole folders full of asemic script. It's a form of characters that look like they should be a language, but actually aren't a language or any known language. And I didn't know the word at the time, but it's asemic script. And it's been used by artists, by designers, by, linguists, people who are involved in code forming and stuff. And you'll notice quite often what I do to make it look like it was an actual script is repeat certain elements within the script itself. And I would do that very consciously, but sometimes it would just naturally happen because obviously it's coming from the same brain. But this is an asemic script. And so when I saw this deck, the Inscription Oracle, I knew that it would be right down my street because it uses asemic images. So we have, in effect, that look like sigils. They look like talismans. They look like the Olympian spirits in grimoire magic that are created. The sigils are created out of a table of Hebrew letters or numbers that then tell you which lines to connect. Yep, like kanji. I'm learning all about hiragana and katakana and kanji characters at the moment for Japanese studies. An I Ching hexagram, perhaps. So they're vaguely a Christian tripartite cross, a space tunnel. Looks like the cover of a Hawkwind album, showing my age, and so forth. Okay, so when people say that they read intuitively, and often that's just another word for guessing or ignorantly at worst, then this is what I mean by intuitive reading, because there is no sense to the image in a symbolic way in terms of its iconography and so forth. We have a basic pictorial language going on. We're all aware of light shining. We're all aware of the notion of being underwater, perhaps being at peace. There's a sort of maybe blood flow there, but it's a little bit like a Rorschach sort of test as well. This reminds me of the scene in the Endgame, the Avengers movie, when they sort of characters having sacrificed someone for the Soul Stone actually end up in a weird reflective place that has a strange sort of almost Japanese, again, like temple or Oriental temple and so forth. Okay, so let's lay out a reading for ourselves. And we're just going to do a message reading. So with this, we are going to do a message, and then I'm going to ask those watching this in the live to assist.
Assist is a closed sac, having a distinct envelope and division compared with the nearby.
Sorry, for some reason the AI on my phone decided to give us a definition of a cyst when I said the word assist. So I apologise for that if that made it onto the recording. But again, we're surrounded by oracles now. You have oracular moments all of the time. So let's take a look at this and use our intuition. What do we feel about this? What do we feel about it? And this is why I say it's nice to have lots of different oracle decks, inspiration decks, whatever you want to call them, to serve different purposes, like having a big toolkit, a oracular toolkit. And this, for me, serves very contemplative purposes, very meditative purposes, deep inner knowledge, inner reflection. And sometimes it's not even in a language sort of way. Sometimes it's it just arrives from the images themselves. So I would notice the colour on this one, first of all, compared to these two cards. And again, here we're going back to how do you learn an oracular deck? You use the intent of the designer, for sure, but also you compare and contrast. Like we saw with the stones in the Philosopher's Stone deck, we were looking at what was different from one card to another, because we then use that in the reading. It's part of the poetic visual language of all symbolism. So here we have going from different colours to a very dark background. It's graduated, and then it changes to red, like something is being born from this card, it seems. So there's an enclosure here, but it's open here. This is more pendulous, I guess. And then this seems more like a solid structure. It's supporting it. It's very much like a temple, like with 3 pillars and this. And can you see how the brain is trying to make sense of the images? Because that's what we do from being a child. This is how I know I can teach people tarot, because there is a visual system built into us to make sense of what we're seeing, make sense of meaning. And the brain doesn't necessarily know the difference between a screen, a painting, and a real situation, because it is trying to make sense of all of those things. So Evelyn in the live chat is saying, I see an open happiness. It's then trapped, I guess. It's almost blocked or drops in some way. There's a dropping feeling to this, perhaps. And happiness is sacrificed. But I do think that something is born out of that as well. That it's sense of, this is quite joyous, isn't it, with the colours, and it's quite open, but it's almost retroactive as well. I feel like that's going backwards. It's almost retreating from something. And here it's like an ending. This is open, but in being open, it's accepting that there could be an ending. And then those three pillars are then shifted to make a solid temple, something that can be supported. So perhaps it's a general lesson about being open to ending. It's an interesting reading, I guess, certainly for myself at the moment. I'm going through a grieving process, that there's the joy of life, and then there's an acceptance of ending, that everything changes, and then something is born. We are all born into life, and we pass away from life, and we go through all of these different stages, and it's part of like the universal life cycle, the birth and death of things. Okay, so can you see how we're trying to make sense of that? And with this particular deck, I don't force it. I don't like to say, right, okay, what does this reading mean? Sometimes with an oracular deck, with a symbolic deck, and particularly a semic deck like this one, the artist is specifically given us a tool for introspection, for reflection, for intuition. And often intuition is not borne out by language, it's borne out by emotion and response to emotion and subtle shifts in one's being, as we were talking about through initiation earlier on. And so I would just sit with these. I'll leave these out for myself and look at them on occasion over the next few days, and allow them to unconsciously seep into dreams, and then reflect on them, and then perhaps write a little haiku, perhaps of 3 lines on this card, and this card. In fact, we might have time. We've got about 13 minutes left, so we could do that with this. So actually taking Bill's reading and Evelyn's reading in the live chat, thank you for that. A rainbow influences, embracing the shadow, parts of the psyche to bring the deeper self into balance. Okay, that's nice. So it is a happiness that goes through a transition and a sacrifice in order to bring some sort of balance and equilibrium, which also reflects the other reading that we did to some extent. It's an initiatory process. So let's try and do a haiku then. So that's for those who might not know what a haiku is, it's a Japanese poetic form. It's in Japanese and also then in English, although obviously it doesn't translate back into Japanese, formed of 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and then 5 syllables. And I often teach this as part of learning how to really get into tarot, because it forces you to consolidate keywords unconsciously to produce the poem, and that installs a interesting little mechanism in people's brains for their tarot readings, and makes them a little bit more succinct. I know the explanation isn't succinct, but the actual method leads to succinctness and being able to consolidate things into a more intense, packed form as well for the client, and a more efficient form as well. So 5. So rainbow opening. So rainbow opening. So rainbow opening. Okay, for card 1. Rainbow opening. And then 7. We're going to go with entrapped with the shadow. So rainbow opening. Shadow shifts, entrap. Shadow shifting entrapment. Rainbow opening. Shadow shifting entrapment. So rainbow opening, shadow shifting entrapment. Let's write this down, because we're going to do something with this in a second. So rainbow opening, shadow shifting entrapment. When you're doing a haiku, you don't often use sort of linking words and things like that because it's a waste of a word when you can keep it even more succinct. And then we've got this idea of happiness being sacrificed, so sacrificed and deeper self into balance. So a temple, so not a temple, we can get rid of a, so temple forming of pillars. There we go. Oh, no, hang on, we're on 5, aren't we? So temple of pillars. There we go, temple of pillars. And we can make it sound mystical like that. So rainbow opening, shadow shifting entrapment, temple of pillars. And that's what we could send the client away with if we wanted to do a proper oracular deep reading to someone using just intuition, a semic deck, and a haiku as well, bringing all of those methods, those approaches together. And it's good to practice with. This is like a lot of things in Tarosophy, as I teach it, it's a practice method that can also be used to install certain skill sets in the practice and also be used as an actual method for other people as well and for yourself. I like to be efficient with that as well. Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Oh, and thank you for being a member as well. And so we actually have Sherry and Tracy from our members. So thank you very much. So rainbow opening, shadow shifting entrapment, temple of pillars. Now, what I wanted to do just to close off with is now, as we looked one way round with looking at the Philosopher's Stone deck and then reading it literally as the words suggested in the book, because that's the way, that's one way of learning a deck and sticking to that. This deck, very different. So we learn it in a different way. We do it intuitively, we do it poetically, but then Ninki has provided, and she sort of says you don't really want to, or you might want to, it might be helpful to have some of her suggested meanings for the symbols that she has painted. So now what we're going to do is see how different the artist is to what we've done here. With Evelyn's interpretation, with Bill's interpretation, with the slight wording of that in haiku and a reinterpretation from me, we're now going to take a look at how it might work if we'd have followed the book first, which we can also do, of course. And as ever, experiment, find out what works with you, with the deck. It is your friendship with the deck, your relationship, no one else's. No one else can really tell you which is going to be the best way for you. All they can do is give you lots of different options as to different ways of going about it. And for you to feel that freedom as well, it's really important that you feel excited and curious and inquiring into a particular deck and learn to use it in your own way. And that might be very different to anyone else's, and that is all for the best. So let's have a look at card 20. Rainbows. So we've got rainbow. Okay, so we've got rainbow. So we've got a match straight away, obviously from the image. Vision, visionary, and dreams. Okay, so for the artist, they've suggested rainbow, chakras, vision, and dreams. Okay, for this card. Card 4, be interesting to see what they've gone for that. Okay, let's have a look. Card 4, regret, heavy, solid, unyielding, holding on. That's interesting, isn't it? They've really gone for regret with that. But they've got, we picked up on this unyielding, holding on, the sort of heaviness, the entrapment part of it. So we've got the entrapment bit of that, and they've gone for regret. So dreams and regret. So dreams leading to regret. And then we've got 40, which is a lot further on in the sequence. Roots, earth, forest, fertile, growth, branches, reaching. So instead of a temple, they've actually got roots, forest, like a tree, but they've got the fertile and the growth aspects of it for themselves. They've really sort of gone, this is like the tree, the temple as a tree as well. So dreams, regret, reaching, dreams, regret, entrapment, but then fertility and reaching coming out of it. And now we know those words, we can now look at those cards again and perhaps build that in. Maybe the artist's interpretation will override ours, maybe it will merge with it, maybe ours will override the artist's entirely. Maybe it will be a blend of those things, a bit like the colours seeping into one thing into another. And that is the Inscription Oracle by Nikki Van Swal. That is in print. You can get it in some beautiful bookmarks and things like that in this style. And she does lots of other styles of artwork as well. So hopefully today we have seen a way of reading 2 oracle decks. I'm going to try and find the Truth Tellers deck of Arcatia, which has a sort of combination of specific symbols, a Kabbalistic structure that's hidden underneath it, and we'll possibly do that not next week. For those watching this live, I'm unfortunately away at it's my father's funeral next week. And so I'll be doing the live class for the secret, the spiritual key to the tarot class, which is our new diploma class. I'll be teaching that live on Saturday, but on Friday I'll be away. So we'll skip next week, and then I'm going to be returning back to doing this weekly as well. Excellent. Yeah, I know. I've got zillions of oracle decks, some of which I don't use, and I only refer to, use as examples, decks of, I actually use them, and I've used them for years and years and years. In this case, just a couple of years, but I just don't understand when people are like reviewing decks all of the time and stuff. And it's really apparent that unless, how can they be reading for real people in real readings every day in order to get a grip on 30 decks that they review every week and things like that? Yes, you can review a deck like you can review a film or you can review a book having read it once, but that's very different to reviewing or sharing or teaching with a deck that you have used for years and years with real readings and grown to love and then to hate and then to love again and so forth. And yeah, there is a place for oracle decks very much. And I like oracle decks as well because they teach us to read differently. They stretch different bits of our skill set, and sometimes we don't get on with them. Sometimes we just find a deck that works for us, like with me with the Philosopher's Stone or the Psi cards and so forth. So definitely I'd encourage tarot card readers to read oracle decks as well. So thanks a lot, everyone. We're going to close off at the top of the hour. And thank you again for being with me. Thank you for your questions and your engagement in the live. If you're watching this as recording, don't forget you can leave comments and ideas, questions as well in the comment section as well. And again, just to mention it one last time, we do have a membership area for these videos, and I'm going to be providing a lot of material, more focused material where we can build certain understandings, skills, knowledge and experience in that as well. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for your condolences. That's very much appreciated. It's been good to have a lot of tarot people on hand over the last week or so, because out of everyone in the world, as cartomantists, as diviners, as oracles, as tarot card readers, we are tested. I've been saying recently that life is our classroom, but death is our teacher, and it really does test us and challenge us to make sense of the world in its deepest life and death, and the depth that's underneath and the truth that's underneath all of these transitions as well. And that's what we do as readers. So thanks a lot, everyone, and I'll look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time, or if you're watching and joining me on the course, then that will be next week. Thanks a lot for your thoughts, and take care of yourselves and each other over the next couple of weeks. Bye for now.